It's 2:02, so let's do this. Welcome, everyone, to 7 Operational Habits of Highly Successful Pool Service Companies. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. This is going to be a fun one. It's kind of a combination of our greatest hits and things that we have gathered from some of our most successful pros that we work with. And we're really, really excited to share these 7 operational habits with you. My name is Nikki Acosta. I am also joined today by our own Director of Operations, Miss Flavia de la Fuente. And then behind the curtain, we have the fabulous Suzanne Reeds, our data and ops specialist, who will be womaning our Q&A. So a couple of housekeeping items if you're just joining us. There is a Q&A feature. If you hover over the bar in Zoom and you hit that Q&A icon, there should be a box that pops up. If you have questions or need to communicate with us, you can do so by entering your question there. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can as possible. So without further ado, a little bit about Skimmer. We are on a mission to help empower y'all to build great businesses. And how we do that is with our software and by content like this. We want to help you in building a great business, in hiring and getting good people to join your team and stay with you, and beef up your operations so you can grow and scale and be profitable. We've got more than 29,000 people using our platform. Over 700,000 pools this year have been serviced by Skimmer. So today we've got a lot to cover. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I will say again that we are really lucky that we have some really, really brilliant customers who use Skimmer, and they have been super instrumental in helping us put this together. If you've joined us in the past, we've had folks like Kyle Peter from Nevergreen, Casey Graham, and Crystal from Yummy Pools. Lots of great customers who run very, very large operations. And so the question was, what is it that these larger operations, these successful pool companies are doing really, really well? And so we asked a bunch of them, we took all that feedback, and we put this together to share with you along with some really great resources and tools that we will share with you after the webinar. So let's get started. Flavia, let's talk about operations. What do we mean by operations?
Well, I asked ChatGPT and it told me it was a set of activities that generate business value. It's the stuff we do every day. It's so broadly defined, but sometimes we should define things by what they are not. Operations is not the analysis of the business. It's the activities of, and the things that keep your businesses running smoothly or not. Sometimes there's operations and processes that are not working and are not running smoothly, but it's a broad net, and it's just the things we're doing to try and generate business value.
And why do they matter, Flavia?
Because they can be executed at varying levels. We can do some processes well, we can do some processes poorly. It really just depends on what your strategy is. What are you trying to accomplish for your business? Not everything needs to be optimized all of the time. There's a principle in operations. People talk about, oh, where's the bottleneck? Where's the bottleneck? There's always going to be a bottleneck on an assembly line. It's your business choice and your business strategy about where it's going to be. Now, we're not necessarily running assembly lines in pool and spa service, but there are places where you want to refine things and places where just getting along is perfectly fine. And we're going to talk about the business choices you can make today and the things on so you can understand what parts of your operation you actually want to be working on.
So I posed this question to Crystal, who's on with us. And for those of you who don't know, Crystal is an admin for Yummy Pools, who services 2,200 insane amount of pools. And she has come in to Yummy to really help them build their operational excellence. And so I asked her, give me your thoughts on operations. Like, how do you think about it? And she gave the example of Mr. Kroc here, the founder of McDonald's. And these are her words verbatim. She said, if something were to happen to you, would your business still run smoothly? Part of the success of a lot of these large businesses, and by the way, a lot of companies that you're likely competing with because of all the private equity and large franchises that have entered the space, they do this really well. They focus on systems instead of specific people. They create the systems that run the business, and then people run the system. So if you are in this place where you want to act like a great company long before you ever become one, building the correct systems and processes and playbooks is a great way to do that. She says prioritize systems training and integrity as guiding principles. And so thank you for that, Crystal. I think it summed it up well. You know, there's a reason why I guess McDonald's is still around, and why a lot of these franchises are able to grow and just deliver consistent service no matter where you go. I mean, it's true at Starbucks, it's true at McDonald's, it's true for a lot of banks even, and people and other services that you may deal with on a day-to-day basis. So first, I want to talk a little bit about setting goals and tracking KPIs. And I'm going to lean on Flavia a little bit for this because we have a ton of cool metrics to share with you here in a minute. But in order to get to sort of the metrics and the KPIs that you're tracking, you need to set your goals first. And when we posed this question to Casey from Yummy Pools in this webinar that we did from 0 to 1,000 pools in 365 days, he was very poignant in his response. He said, look, if you want to build a great business, you have to start with a question. What do you want? And he was very direct in letting people know there's really no right or wrong answer to this, but it's not what you don't want. It's not what you don't want to be. It's what do you want? Do you want to build a legacy for your family to inherit? Do you want to make more money? Do you want to be able to take more vacations and have a little bit more freedom in your life? You know, depending on what it is that you want, that's your guiding principle, or what he calls the owner's intent. And by the way, if you want to read more about that, his No BS small business book is available on Amazon. We'll send you the link, but it is pretty great. It's very concise and kind of gets you in the right headspace to kind of think about what you want for your business and how to reach your goals. When you are setting goals, they should be smart. They need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. You know, you don't want to throw a goal out there that is so far, pie in the sky that you'll never get there. And that's not good for your teams either. If you need to have milestones, you need to have a time frame in which you want to achieve those goals. And so Casey's advice here is, if you want to accomplish your goals, focus, do a few things really, really well. Don't be afraid to give up control, i.e. hire for help if you need it, or train people to do things that are not adding business value to your business, and feel comfortable letting that go to someone else and delegating that task. He said, think creatively about how you acquire customers, take care of your employees, leverage technology, and of course, define your KPIs and manage to them. Flop, you have thoughts on that?
I do. So our key performance indicators, love them, hate them. It's just the numbers, it's the scoreboard. And based on what you want to do with your business, you get to build your own scoreboard. But then you have to be accountable to it, right? And there's a cadence, there's a weekly, a monthly, and if you've really got your operation together, a yearly cadence for those really big, hairy goals. But there's a performance metric that can be applied to any part of your business. And I believe Nikki has there it is, the drop of all kinds of KPIs. I am a less is more person. I like having a few things to focus on. And as Casey said, pick a few things and focus on them. There's any number of things you can measure. And what we would like to do, what we did for you on the next slide, is organize things a little more into a way that's, I hope, more digestible. If you're focused on growth, there's certain things you're going to care about versus profitability. If you're just top line focused, you just want to get people in the door, customer count, is your revenue line going up, and understanding your customer acquisition cost, not because you're trying to manage it down, but because you're trying to invest in that area of the business. Similarly, if you're focused just on a profitable business, you're focused on revenue per customer. You don't really care about how many customers you have. You're just maximizing your footprint. And maybe in conjunction with focusing on profitability, you're probably also focused on operations and running a high quality operation to ensure the retention of those customers so you can drive more revenue. And I like to think about the operations metrics as where are there errors in the system? Where are there cracks? And what do they look like when they manifest, right? If there's mistakes and errors in the system, that's going to show up as service calls. It's going to show up as customer inquiries. It'll show up as cancellations. So that's where I would be looking for cracks in the system. We're going to talk about cash management later in the presentation, but I know everybody wants to make payroll, wants to invest in the business, and there's things you can do there to optimize your cash position. And of course, if you're just focused on the team, which, it's tough to find great people, it's tough to train them, tough to keep them. Percent of referrals for new hires, is the word getting out that you're a good employer? Absenteeism, right? People don't show up, people clock out, people sick out. That's, a negative signal, and turnover is obviously a negative signal. And the strategies you'll employ to meet these performance metrics, we'll talk about later in the presentation as well. But this is the scoreboard.
Yeah, and we'll send this to you. By the way, I know this is a lot. By the way, this came from Nevergreen Pools. Kyle he's a self-described nerd, but he's managed to grow a business in a couple of years from like 0 to 1,400 pools. And he's like, these are the top ones that I track. He actually tracks somewhere around 300 different metrics for his business. And then each of his team leads has their own set of metrics that they manage to. So again, we'll send this out and get these to you. Leo's asking if there's score examples to set for the target of these KPIs. That's a really good question. I asked around just for, looking at profit margins, and I got answers that ranged everywhere from 19% to one pollers who are looking at 50%. And so it really just depends on what kind of business that you want to run and what you want to achieve. And obviously in areas where there's very, very high density, it's a lot easier to get to a ton of pools faster. In areas that are more spread out, it takes a lot longer. And so, that just by virtue of geography, there's not really an apples to apples comparison there.
And I would just benchmark yourself, right? Like, where are you today on any one of these? Like, it starts with actually measuring what you want to improve. So how many cancellations were there this month and the prior month? And where would you like to hold that number? What was your revenue? Where would you like it to be? What is your cost per lead? What would you like it to be?
I asked about churn in particular, like how many, customers should you lose for whatever cause, right? Someone sold a house or whatever. And most of our successful pool pros said, if you're at 1% per month, you're doing a pretty good job. They usually see about a 2% bump at the end of the season coming into fall. But 1% is kind of the average, which I think comes out to something like 11% of your customers can be expected to turn over in a year.
There's a healthy level of churn for sure. There's lower quality customers that, healthy level of churn.
So let's talk about streamlining processes, because this is one thing that these large companies do really, really, really well. So when it comes to systems, playbooks, processes, SOPs, your standard operating procedures, they can literally be applied to any aspect of your business. And the result is that you should have more consistent service and a higher level of quality of service. And this goes for your relationships with your customers and how you treat them, with your employees. So it's internal and external. But the goal here is to kind of take what's out of your head, because you probably already know some of this stuff off the top of your head, and getting it down into writing and making it repeatable, and not having to kind of reinvent the wheel every time something happens, right? So here's some examples, and we'll cover some of these today. But do you have a new hire guide or an employment agreement? Do you have a service agreement? If there's one thing that I could say will change your business and is a pretty low effort, it's having a service agreement in place for any time you onboard a new customer. Do you have sales and marketing playbooks? What happens if you go and generate leads? How long should you wait before you follow up, for the second or third time? What can you put in front of those people in the meantime while they're still in the process of making a decision? There are some things with Skimmer around how you are quoting customers or the work order templates that you build that we'll look into a little bit. There are equipment troubleshooting procedures. If my pump is making a funny sound or if a customer tells me it's not, what steps do my techs need to take in order to be able to troubleshoot that specific piece of equipment? There's customer onboarding and offboarding checklist. What happens when you onboard a customer? What are all the things that you need? What is all the information you need to collect? Similarly, if a customer leaves you, what needs to happen to make sure that they're still not getting emails or invoices from you? There's calculators that will show you an example of a repair cost calculator. And, in light of what's happened in Florida, I saw all of the social media activity. Do you have an emergency response plan? If something goes really, really awry, what tools are you going to use to message your customers? What are you going to message them? Are you going to set expectations for things that you might have to charge for because they're going to take you a lot longer to clean up? So having kind of these systems and playbooks and being prepared in the event that something happens is a good way to streamline your business and also free up some of your time. So I want to shine the light a little bit here on Crystal. Again, she was the Yummy Pools admin, and she has put together this really, really amazing guide. Skimmer is an incredibly powerful tool, but it does require some setup. And so one of the areas where Crystal really shines is in how to set up your work order templates. So these are, common repairs, common tasks that your techs will do in the field that are not exactly service related. So it's everything else besides regular service. And she put in this guide not only a bunch of examples, but how she color codes them so that everybody knows what the color code means. We had customers do this where they color code things based on who on the team is involved. We've had customers who have their own kind of abbreviation schemas, like Crystal uses PC, pool clean, pool drain, pool clean, acid wash, pool clean. So she has those categorized here. So this is a free guide. You can get it at that link below. We'll send this link out to you as well. Crystal is a fractional admin, so she does work for customers who need help in setting this up and can do that for you. But this is a really, really fantastic resource that can help you kind of streamline your work order tasks so you're not having to recreate it every single time. Here's another example of something that came from Yummy Pools, and this is something that they use across their business for all of their locations, and it's pretty simple. It's a repair cost calculator. When it comes to pricing out what things should cost, it can get a little bit tricky sometimes. In this example, he included merchant fees, which is pretty cool because you can expect if you're using some kind of billing platform or Skimmer billing, you will pay a little bit of a merchant fee, right? And so you want to make sure that you can recoup those costs. When he gave this example, he also made sure to let people know that you should also charge for small parts, unions. If you're using, um, glue, supplies, like little things, you can lump those into a line item to make sure that you're charging for them because those little things really, really do add up. This also allows you to input your labor costs and it ensures you're hitting your margins and you're consistent with your pricing, which is especially important if you've got a lot of folks in the same area that you're servicing and they go to compare estimate costs with other folks. So we'll make this available to you as well, again, following the webinar. Let's talk a little bit about training and retaining employees. Our survey that we did last year, this is a major concern for so many pool service companies out there. And there are some folks who are doing it well, and there are some folks who could probably use a little bit help. Uh, when you're trying to attract and retain employees, Casey was pretty adamant that you need to make the time to lead. This is true. Like people usually quit bosses, not companies. One good way to get people started off on the right foot is to start with an offer letter or an employment agreement and give people a pathway to growth. If someone's there at your company and you're like, oh yeah, as soon as you're good with this, we'll get you on a path to repair tech and you can make more money. Casey called that the holographic carrot. You're chasing something that doesn't really exist. It's not real. It's not time bound. There are no sort of consistent steps to get to where you want to go. And depending on the type of employee that you have, there's people who care about freedom. There's people who care about money. There's people who care about advancement. Those employees can be motivated in a number of different ways, but having a career pathway to growth that really speaks to them is a good way to retain employees. As far as feedback goes, there are a lot of companies, I know it's hard when you're out there, but there are a lot of companies out there that don't have team meetings or are not meeting with their team regularly. And a lot of times that can leave your employees out there feeling like they're on an island by themselves. So it's a good thing to have a regular team meeting, even if it's biweekly. Weekly is great, but if it's biweekly or even monthly meetings to get your folks together, even if you're a small team, talk about what's working, talk about what's not working. Believe it or not, there are whole systems that are available to show people how to run an effective meeting. One of them is the entrepreneurial operating system, the IDS framework for a meeting, where you identify your issues, you discuss them, and you solve them. And then if you can't solve them, they get carried over into the next meeting. Some other cool things we've heard from our larger customers is that they have anonymous suggestion boxes in their office, so they can take suggestions from people who may not feel comfortable coming to their manager or to you directly. But it gives you a good kind of path to get that feedback without people feeling uncomfortable. And then, of course, celebrate wins. Those team meetings are a great way to get together and celebrate what is going well, especially if you're sharing those KPIs and everyone in the room has a hand in meeting those KPIs. You can celebrate those wins together. Last but not least, create the incentives that drive the behavior. This is one thing that has been proven to work, especially with this younger culture who is totally in this world of gamification. Give them bonuses for if they get good reviews, give them bonuses if they refer a great employee. Like, this is a good way to drive great behaviors, to create those incentives and celebrate those wins. So this came from Yummy Pools, actually, and this is an example of an employment agreement. And I know this is hard to read, and we'll send it to you afterwards, but this is how they set great expectations with potential new employees. They have start dates. They let them know if they're W-2 or if they're a contractor and what their pay is. They let them know what constitutes a full-time employee, which for them, a full route is 50 stops per week. Or if they're commercial pools, it's that number is a little bit different. It talks about overtime, like what happens if you need to have overtime. It talks about a probationary period. There's a whole policy around pay time off, leveraging the technology. In this case, they're using Skimmer and they're using other tools that they provide training for, but they want to make sure that people can run those on an app. They talk about their vehicle policy, which is really, really important to them as they try to minimize costs and make sure that all their vehicles are maintained. They let people know there's a 2-strike policy as well. So if someone messes up twice, like, that's it, but it gives them kind of a way to be able to address issues and make sure that they can provide that feedback to their employees. And then last but not least, there's stuff about equipment and chemicals. So Yummy's a little bit different in the sense that they give all of their employees their own card and their own specific budget. And they know, based on their experience and size of pools, how much each pool should cost chemical wise. And so they really hold their employees to it. I'm sure that you all have employees out there that, well, I'll use an example from the IPSA leader from the North Austin chapter. He's like, I know who's doing well because every 3 months they're asking me if they can buy a new brush. I know who's doing well because they run out of DE. Like, that's how he's gauging if employees are doing a really good job or not. So setting these expectations up front can be super helpful and kind of minimize any issues later on down the line as far as expectations go. Here's another example, and this is a career advancement path for techs. And, I'll let you know that I use ChatGPT to do this, and there's the prompt that I gave it at the bottom, but I was really impressed with what came back. I said, give me 3 levels of a full service tech and a promotion path. And this is what it came out with. And all I did was change the little bullets to check boxes. So when you do have those employees that come and ask for a raise, you can say, well, have you met all the requirements for a level 2 experienced full service technician? And when they say, can I have more money? You can say, well, have you met all the requirements for the level 3 full service technician? So this gives your employees something to grow to. It gives you a checklist to make sure you're holding them accountable and that they're getting the necessary experience and skills to be able to make more money and advance their careers. All right, on to building and maintaining strong relationships. This is something that a lot of these large companies do really, really well. They communicate well. They communicate well within their organization, and they communicate really well with their customers. And this quote from Eric here that came in yesterday, and I was like, oh, how perfect. I'll use this in the webinar. He said, I'll be honest with you, since I engaged you guys in your communication abilities, that's why I'm getting pulls, because word spreads that, hey, this guy keeps you updated on what's happening at every part of the flow, and people absolutely love that. So again, this is one kind of benefit of using Skimmer if you're not already, is, the automated service emails, the broadcast emails, but keeping your customers informed makes them loyal. It makes them feel like they know what's going on, and it prevents surprises. Service agreements are a really, really great way to set those clear expectations. And we'll cover that in a second. Last but not least, building and maintaining a solid network. Communicating with folks is great. In addition to communicating well and with integrity, it's very important that you build and maintain a solid network. I mean, obviously there's gonna be things that come up that you don't do. You may not do leak detection. You may not do media blasting. So having a network who can help you fill those gaps will not only make it easier for your customer to trust you, but it'll allow you to expand your business as well. We did a webinar last year, I believe, on service agreements. And this is one that came from a guy named Bryce out of Arizona. And we made some slight edits to it. But if you have a service agreement, your customers will know what to expect, and you will prevent some pretty gnarly surprises down the road. Some cool things that were in this full service agreement: there was a price increase policy, right? There was, hey, every year we evaluate to see, where the market's at and our costs, and we make adjustments. That way your customers know to expect that. They share the service frequency, the rate type, what's included in terms of the services that you provide, what chems are included or not. There's a part in there about being able to access the home and what happens, or the pool, and what happens when there's inclement weather. There is a preventative maintenance frequency. There's also a cool part in there that says, hey, for any repairs that are under $75, we're just going to go ahead and do them and bill you for them. Instead of having to seek out, a quote every time a skimmer basket cracks, or, a pressure gauge needs to be replaced, you can just say, hey, we're just going to go ahead and do that for you and add it to your invoice. A lot of these larger companies have made use of auto pay. And if there's one way that you want to really increase your cash flow and improve your cash flow and make it really easy to make sure you get paid on time, get your customers on auto pay. There's also fees here for service calls or emergency call fees on nights and weekends. There's short-term rental policies that are in there. And then there's kind of an opt-in for communication saying like, hey, as part of working with us, we may send you emails and SMS messages from time to time. Last but not least, there's a termination clause. In this case, it's like, hey, you can leave us at any time, but we can also leave you at any time. So this doesn't have to be something that someone necessarily needs to sign either. You can also pose this as a welcome packet if you think your customers are not going to like the word pool service agreement. But it's really a great document to go over with new customers to make sure that they understand all of your policies. And then if something happens down the line, you can always refer back to it and say, hey, I'm sorry, I have to charge you, as part of your pool service agreement.
The service agreement is both to inform your customers and to set healthy boundaries with them, for them, and also for you. I consider requiring a payment method on file to be a great example of that healthy boundary. And there's been plenty of customers in the past who have a lot of delinquent customers, a lot of pros who have delinquent customers. And the moment they started setting that healthy boundary of, we require a payment method on file, or we're not coming back to service your pool, their business just changed, and they spend a lot less time chasing things down. And so to make that healthy boundary very clear up front, right? It just makes running the business so much easier, and it becomes a set it and forget it type of cadence. A lot of these things, it's about removing the fog, removing doubts about what happens if, and just laying out kind of the terms of engagement. They are paying money, and this is the value that you are going to provide for that money. And it leaves less things to chance and discretion as well. If you have an administrator or a technician, right, who's asking you, an owner, or a tech who's asking an owner, like, hey, the customer's asking about this thing or that thing or the other, you can just say, according to our service agreement, a service call is $50, right? Like, it just removes the amount of questions that flow up the chain, and that's kind of sand in the machine, right? You want to grease the machine, and these are greasing components. The fewer questions that surface up to the people in charge and calling the shots, the better, because that way you can stay on offense and focused on real fires, right? Versus, oh, this customer, they really want to pay by Bitcoin. Sorry, we require a card on file. That's how we do business. That's how we optimize our business in order to run a high quality customer experience. So that's how I think about what these service agreements do. They are containing the noise, they are containing the questions such that your front lines can handle all of these things without everything filtering up to you.
And we have a question that came in about this. Louise says, I 100% agree, but I just want to understand how business usual this practice is versus a verbal agreement. Let's say I start applying this. Will clients churn because of these new standards? In my experience, no. And in fact, with a new year coming very soon, it's a really great time to do that. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, if you think some of your customers may not like it, great. Start applying it to the new customers that join you. But honestly, if they go to, a large franchise, they're going to get a service agreement. And it's actually pretty professional to have a service agreement in place. I've not heard of somebody creating a service agreement. There's probably a way to craft it like, hey, as part of our growth, we want to make sure that everyone understands our policies. So we've developed this new service agreement to help you understand, our policies and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I think it can be pretty friendly. And it's also a good reminder to kind of resell your own value too, right? Like, here's the things we do. Here's what we come around. Here's how often we come around. Here's what we offer. If you want a service call, it's going to be $25. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It can just be clear, factual, friendly, and set those boundaries. And I'm a pool owner, and I appreciate having that clarity and understanding what my service does and doesn't provide.
Yeah, especially when it comes to things like service call fees, right? Like, you can always, I know it can be tough to want to charge customers for that, but if you're taking the time to drive out there to diagnose or troubleshoot an issue, you should charge for that. And if you have it in your pool service agreement and someone objects, you can say, hey, just understand, it's taking time out of my day, and this was part of our pool service agreement that we presented to you at the beginning. Casey's asking, how does it affect the business if we present the service agreement, but we don't require a signature? That's up to you. I mean, look, if a customer, if you were to have some kind of dispute, depending on what, if
Yeah.
it's like service, like, are you really going to go to court? Right? Like,
Yeah.
I know, I do know pros that do require termination notice, and do try to charge at least through the rest of the month if a customer cancels in the middle of the month, or not have to refund them. But I think if you wanted to present this service agreement and didn't require a signature, it's still okay. I mean, maybe you send it to them, digitally. Julie here left a comment and says, we send all of our service agreements out for e-signatures using Adobe, and we're a small company. So yeah, there's absolutely ways to do this. And again, the large franchises, they're doing this, right? They're putting these out in front of people. So it's not a bad thing. In fact, I think in many regards, it makes you look more like a professional.
It's professionalizing for sure.
All right. Moving on to the next one, managing cash effectively. This is on you, Flavia. This is your
I
jam.
love cash. Who doesn't? We love cash. I want to talk about accelerating cash flow. Again, this is a greatest hits webinar. So we talked about this last year around this time, but great companies use cash to fund growth. What else are you going to use? And I want to introduce a metric. It is a KPI, and it is a KPI we can manage too, called cash flow conversion. And it is a measure of your operating efficiency. How good are you at turning money spent on the business into revenue. A lot of people want to grow their business, and frequently there's a chicken and egg problem of, do I go get the customers first, to the point that I'm stretching my team and then hire somebody up to absorb that excess capacity? Or do I hire the tech, buy the truck, and hope to a higher power that I'm going to be able to bring on the customers fast enough to recoup that cost? If you manage your cash well, hopefully you can accelerate your cash position and fund those capital expenditures that you need to make, in addition to making payroll. And there's various ways that we can attack this issue. Nikki. So this is the cash conversion cycle. It's days to cash. The number is about days. So when you calculate it, it's going to be 37 days or 45 days. And this is a known metric for accounting professionals, and acquirers and lenders care about this. It's a way to identify improvements you can make to accelerate your time to cash, and it's a measure of how well you're running your business. Can you flip back, Nick?
Sorry.
It's okay. And a lower number, right? Lower is better. We want very few days to convert to cash. It means being able to make payroll, deliver new orders, and invest in growth. So there's three components. There's how long is your days inventory outstanding? How much is stuff sitting on the how long is stuff sitting on the shelf or sitting on the truck before it's actually converted into an invoice? How long does it take to go from invoice to revenue? And then, and this is the negative side of the equation, how many days are you able to stretch your payables? That's a tough one, right? The stuff that you owe outside of the business. So you add days inventory to days sales and subtract days payables. This is a very discoverable calculation. You can Google it, you can chat GPT it, but I want to talk about conceptually what this means. Next slide, Nick. So just to lay it out, right? Days inventory outstanding. From the moment you purchase inventory to invoice for work performed, how long does that take? How long between invoicing for work performed and getting paid? How long does that take? And the fewer days, the better, right? And then how long can you stretch your payables? From a invoice received to a supplier paid, for example. So you're richer than you think. The place where you have the most power to impact this number, because it's most in your control, is your invoicing. Inventory is tough, right? Frequently, you have to want to buy in bulk. Chemical prices have been high in the past few years. I think they're coming down recently, but you have less control here in terms of how long stuff is sitting on your shelf, because frequently you want to be buying in bulk. What you can do is accelerate your time to invoicing, right? You want to invoice for repair as soon as you can. Those are thousands and thousands of dollars. There's no reason to loan your customer that money. Similarly, with days sales outstanding, how long from when that invoice is sent to a customer to when it is collected? There's a lot of things you can do here. You can streamline your payment methods. You can set those healthy boundaries with a service agreement and say, we require a card on file, period. You can use auto pay. Skimmer billing offers auto pay, and you can take that control and ensure that you are getting paid every time on time. And customers are usually fine with this. And you can beat the system. You can bill ahead for service and in arrears for dosages and installed items, right? So you want me to come out to your house and service your pool this month? Fantastic. For $300, I will do that. Because especially for service, if you think about how long it's taking between delivering the service and then billing for it, if you're offering a month of service during week 1, during week 2, during week 3, during week 4, and then you bill at the end of the month in arrears, and then you have, a net 15. That's almost 6 weeks from when that first visit happened. Like, that's a long time. That's 45 days. So what can we do to at least ensure that you can cut that number down, right? You can cut that number down. Finally, days payables outstanding. Your options are, you have a few options to stretch your payables, not a lot. Again, you can open an account with a wholesaler, familiar with the major distributors in the industry. To get a line of credit, showing strong collections really helps. So the middle here, their middle topic of accelerating your collections, if you can show that, right, show a very low AR number, accounts receivable number, when you're applying for a line of credit, of course Heritage is going to be like, yeah, absolutely, here's your line of credit, because you get paid on time, you're good for it. The other thing you can do is use a commercial card. These can be, I think, a little more expensive, but it does put a little more control into your hands in terms of when things get paid down. So those are some options. Again, it's hardest to impact this number from these outside perspectives when you're interacting with vendors and, frankly, really large companies in the industry that, for most pool and spa professionals, if you're a handful of employees, you're not a huge customer to them. So it's tough to get leverage when negotiating payables. But you do have the ability to set healthy boundaries with your customers in terms of how you get paid. So that's the thing that I want to emphasize the most here. And I love talking about cash flow conversion. It's probably the only thing in accounting that I love. And happy to talk about this with anybody. Our teams know how to talk about this with you if you want to revisit ways to cut down your collection cycle. And I think we have a calculator coming, so you can calculate it for yourself. And I'll stop right there.
Pro tip on the cards too. I know quite a few pros who take their family on vacation just by charging everything to the same card. So if you're not doing that, get a card with points. Flavia, this one's all you.
Yeah, so this is the same inflows and the same outflows, just on a different time basis, right? On the left, if your cash position might look like this, you have some people who, if you're on net 15, some people who pay early. The bulk of people are paying, the plurality of people, I should say, are paying on time. And then you have your stragglers who are a little week late. And then you're really slow folks. And this presumes that everybody pays, within a 30-day period. Your expenses, again, you're a little less in control. You have to make a run to, the SCP. You got to buy more chlorine. You got to buy more skimmer baskets. You don't have a ton of control around those outflows. But if you can pull forward those inflows, again, same outflows, same inflows, but a totally different cash position in the beginning of the month, you can get ahead of a lot of stuff. And it is the easiest thing for you to control.
Thank you for that. So much about cash. I love
Love
that.
cash.
Flavia loves
All
talking
cash.
cash. All right, let's talk a little bit about upselling and diversifying services. So we shared at the beginning of the presentation that, if you're comfortable with the number of customers that you have, how do you make more money from the customers that you do have? And I will say that in my experience, fear is the number one thing that holds people back from doing some of these things. I have seen some really fantastic attempts to upsell equipment. For example, Bryce out of Arizona got a spec sheet for one of the variable speed pumps and just said, hey, took all the stuff from there. Did you know that with a variable speed pump, you can save X amount on energy costs? They're not as loud, blah, 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 blah. Sent that out before busy season started. With the summer approaching, now's a good time to consider a variable speed pump. He had 300 customers. That one email he sent netted him 9 new pumps. He installed 9 new pumps just from sending that out. Same goes for things like automation packages. Like it may not seem like a big deal to you to tell your customer like, hey, you can get this, cool automation thing from Pentair and you can access it from your phone and be able to see what's happening. But to your customer, it might be a really big deal. They just may not know about it because they don't live in the pool world, right? So think creatively about how you can do that. Another great way is to package and promote your services. If you do build packages, it gives people clear expectations. It's great for search engine optimization if you can put them on your website. Uh, these are some examples from Nevergreen Pools, but he has all kinds of packages for everything. He also does something that's called an annual chemical treatment. So he tells customers like, hey, we can either charge you individually, which can be more expensive, or we can just charge you this annual fee. And it includes all of these extra chemicals that we may use throughout the year. And it also saves them from the headache of having to try to manage all that or make sure that his employees are putting it into Skimmer. So that's another good thing that you can do. I've seen all kinds of really great things. I've seen people, put out um, a notice about PolarX ahead of the summer. Like, hey, this is a PolarX device. We'll go ahead and test your water and, make sure that your metal levels are good. But this can significantly, reduce the amount of chlorine we need to put in your pool and prevent algae. And we can go ahead, if you're okay with it, we can go ahead and install that for whatever, $70. Which is a deal. Like that's a good profit margin. So for dropping something in a skimmer basket. So think creatively about what you are selling to your existing customers. I think Polar X's are great. We had, Fred Schwer on a podcast, and that's on YouTube, and he educated us about the science around it. Obviously, you need to test metals first, but whatever products that are out there, even things like loungers and umbrellas and accessories or LED lights so people can change the color of the lights in their pool, from their phone or whatever. Like those are things that people like, right? They're novel, they're cool. And especially in the slow seasons, it's a good opportunity to make some extra cash. We talked about service calls earlier. I've seen this apply to many different ways, but one popular way seems to be like, hey, we're going to charge you a service call, but if you do the repair with us, we'll go ahead and apply that service call charge to your work order invoice. So that's one great way to just kind of get around that. And that also prevents people from just going out and kicking tires and trying to get quotes from a million people. If you are doing service calls and or you are in a position to do a night or weekend 911 has to happen right now, it's an emergency. If you want to provide that service, make it worth your while. Make sure that you put your emergency service calls on there. Kyle's is at the top. $200 for weekly service, $250 if you're not an existing customer with me, or $380 if it's an emergency or if you're out of our area. And being able to convey those, not only might it prevent people from just calling to kick the tires, but it's clear, right? And it's great for customers to know that you can do that if the need arises. All right, last section here, and then we'll take some questions. So if you have them, feel free to pop them in that Q&A. There are lots of different ways to invest in the business and areas where you should invest in the business. One of those things is people. So things like trainings and certifications and boot camps. Pool Nation does an awesome boot camp. A lot of the conferences that is amazing. They've got kind of like a service tech boot camp, and then they've got a advanced like repair tech boot camp, and they have hands-on training with a bunch of different equipment. If you don't have, the time or the bandwidth to be able to train your techs and get them the hands-on experience, this is a really good option, right? To send them to this boot camp and let them get the hands-on training with other pool pros. Those boot camps are usually, 2 or 3 days, but it's a great investment because they're going to learn things in there, and it might be even good for you too, right? To go in and see what's new and put your hands on some newer equipment. But it's a good way to get education. Trade associations. I have personally visit with the San Antonio, North Austin, and South Austin chapters regularly, and it is so amazing to see what happens in trade association meetings. The San Antonio group in particular, I think that's the largest one in the country, the largest IPSA chapter, but they have a group me chat for all of their members. And so anytime anyone has a question, anytime someone's like, hey, what's the name of the plaster guy that covers North San Antonio? It's just the camaraderie and the network that naturally evolves out of a trade association is worth its weight in gold. So if you are not a member of a trade association, attend a meeting and check it out. I used to think that associations were really kind of old school and nothing great happened there, and that the only type of people that wanted to go there were people who didn't have anything better to do. I was wrong. These are fantastic ways to meet people. They bring vendors in all the time to talk about things. They offer rebates to people that you may not know about. So I will continue to sing the praises of your local trade associations. And then benefits. Benefits are evolving. I know it is really, really expensive to provide healthcare benefits. When you are a larger franchise or a larger company, the risk is spread out. So it's a lot easier to get a good deal on a group health plan. If you have 5 or fewer employees, it can be a little bit trickier. But I have seen some pretty cool things like there are companies that will offer their employees an extra $200 a month to be paid towards a healthcare policy. And all the employee has to do is submit a receipt for that payment. So there are some interesting things that you can do with benefits. The large franchises, again, all of them are offering benefits, and because of that, they are able to attract and retain employees. So even if it's not, full package benefits, think about what benefits that you can provide to your employees that might make them want to stay with you longer. Uh, when it comes to growth and efficiency, a great place to invest is in your marketing and your branding, hands down. I know there's a lot of folks out there that don't want their name on their truck, but that is probably one of the most powerful billboards that you can create. And it doesn't really cost that much if people are seeing your brand in their neighborhood every week. Same thing with marketing. If you're looking to grow your business, it is not that expensive to advertise on platforms. What I will say is that the platform performance varies depending on where you're at in the country. If you're in a dense city, paying for, Google Leads is going to be a lot more expensive because there's more competition. Whereas if you're in a more rural area, you could probably get leads for as low as $15 per lead. So look at your options out there, whether it's Yelp or Thumbtack. We did create a really great digital marketing guide that is available and free on our website at getskimmer.com/resources. Last up in this area, financial literacy, and I'll be the first to say that this is not my strong suit, but we have met with quite a few customers who have gained these skills. And one book that seems to come up quite a bit is this one called Profit First by Mike M. I'm not going to try to say his last name, but that was a resource that has popped up a few times and might be worth checking out. Last but not least, invest in technology too. Obviously, and selfishly, shameless plug for Skimmer, we can help with a lot of the streamlining of processes by the nature of how our software works. Like that is what it's meant to do. It's meant to improve communication. It's meant to reduce the amount of time that it takes for things to happen. And it's meant to create customer loyalty. So if you haven't checked out Skimmer, give us a try. Uh, if you do get Skimmer, make sure you set it up properly. You should absolutely put your products in there, what you're paying for them, what you charge for them. Same with your chemicals, same with your labor rates. And if you need help doing that, we can absolutely help you. Our support team is available by phone or email to help you do that. But take the time upfront to set Skimmer up properly because it's going to make everything else easier. That work order guide that Crystal shared is another great example. And last but not least, check out some AI tools. So we do have a new set of AI-powered operations coaches, pool business coaches, marketing coaches. And this is actually a paid version of ChatGPT. So it's going to be a little bit, I'll say, more complete and robust than the free version that's out there online. But these are free for you to use. And you can do all kinds of things, writing vehicle policies, like give me a vehicle policy for full service company. And that will save you a ton of time. It's pretty amazing to see how quickly those evolve. They can also create SOPs, they can help you develop processes, and they can also help you write playbooks. Even a prompt as easy as, give me a guide for a pool tech on how to troubleshoot a pump. And it was like, here's all the steps you need to do. And here's a chart. If it's making noise, here's what you do. If it's not running, here's what you do. If it's leaking, here's what you do. There are some really great tools that exist out there, and they're again, they're getting better by the day. All right. I know that was a lot. Again, we will send all of this information to you, but let's go ahead and with the little bit of time that we have left, let's take some questions. For those of you who are here live, I'm going to pop all of the resources we discussed, the link to those in the chat. If you want to grab and copy and paste that link, if you want to download it or use any of the tools that we shared today, that's where you get them. Jake,
Nikki, I got to say, I'm overwhelmed by our own webinar, and I'm sure others are feeling the same way. Just pick one thing. If you can walk away from this and just pick one thing to work on, that is a step forward in the right direction. It's very, very overwhelming, especially if you're a perfectionist or you drive yourself hard or you're ambitious to want to do everything. Better do one thing really, really well, and then move on to the next thing versus trying to do all of the things. So that's our goal for you today. Is we hope you pick one thing to work on.
Those things that by the way, in talking to people, if I were to pick two things from this whole presentation, it would be to create a service agreement and get your customers on auto pay.
Yep.
Like those two things will change your life and save you so much time. Crystal was telling me it used to take her all day. She worked for this company that had like 120 pulls. And she's like, it used to take me a whole day to do billing. And she's like, now that I have Skimmer billing and people are on auto pay, it literally takes me 15 minutes. So yes, if you are looking for a place to start, that's a pretty good one.
I agree. Service agreement, auto pay.
Jacob asks, I'm sorry I missed the name of the boot camp you mentioned. Pull Nation. They run a pretty awesome podcast, but they do trainings at a bunch of different conferences all over the country. I think they're doing one for sure in Dallas next month. And I don't know if there are seats left, but the feedback from those has been pretty fantastic. In fact, I'll be attending their boot camp in November, just ahead of the Pool Spa and Patio show. Let's see here. Marketing emails, we could overwhelm our clients with too many touch points. This could lead to fatigue and annoyance, potentially causing them to miss critical communications. Yeah, there is a such thing as spamming people. And we're certainly mindful of that at Skimmer. We don't want to overwhelm people with things. One cool thing about email is if you are sending mass emails, so our system uses a third-party mail system, and they work really, really hard to keep our IPs clean, meaning that they work with the Gmails and the Outlooks and the various providers to make sure that they're not blocking our emails. If you are looking to send out those types of emails, consider using a service to do that if you want to send them. Obviously, you can use Skimmer's broadcast emails if you want to do that, but if you want to send other types of
and I would say even easier. Most Skimmer pros are using service emails. You can, if you don't want to pepper people with a bunch of emails, which I totally agree, you can embed things into the body of the email in that default message. You can include holidays. You can include, hey, we now require a card on file. Like there's many ways to use the service email. And, for a full month, you can change the content of that email let's say at the end of the year to say, in 25, we're going to proceed in this way. A few changes to our business, if it in fact applies across the business. But that's a really handy place to customize the message. And you can, if you want to do it on a per customer basis, use service email messages.
Casey Roloff says, we're using Go High Level, a really cool marketing CRM, by the way, that a lot of pros use, and send out 2 emails a week. Would you say this is too many? I would say if you're sending out service emails already and your customers are reading them, probably not. If they're adding value, probably not. If it's sales attempts or something else, it could be. I do notice that there are some pool pros who send out like some really cool educational stuff, or if there's a hurricane coming, how to do hurricane prep. Stuff like that it is great, and it makes you look like the professional that you are. So if it's around those types of topics or it's educational, You might also try to mix something that's educational with a, by the way, here's something else,
Yep.
strategy.
Absolutely. I love that stuff.
How often are the boot camps? Oh man, that's a good question. I know they do them around major trade shows, and those trade shows are usually between like starting kind of now through like March. So before things get really, really busy again. You can check out the Pool Nation website. I think it's poolnation.com, but they usually will post information about boot camps there. Also, Arenda has really amazing training too, especially around chemistry, and it's free. So if you want great training that is free and you want to get your folks up to speed on chemistry, check out the Arenda courses. They're pretty freaking impressive. Uh, what else do we have? I think that's a bit for now. Can we get the ability to leverage additional templating with emails so we can now add name of body of water, adding clickable URL? That's a really good suggestion, and I will make sure that we log that, Rob, and get it to our product team. That is a really
What's the
good
what does he want to insert? Those variable objects?
yes, like name of body of water, or adding a
Name of body
clickable
of water.
URL. You can
Okay.
add a clickable URL now. Um, the service email to your website with an explanation of reading. Yeah, you can customize your service emails to add whatever you want, and you can include URLs. You can actually upload photos too. It's a little bit, there's a few more steps in it, but that is doable as well. But yes, those are good suggestions.
Mhm.
Elizabeth says we've been utilizing social media a lot more in the last few years, and I've noticed it's drawn in more customers. Absolutely. It's a really good, easy way for your customers who may already be happy with you to send it over to their friends that they're already hanging out with on social media.
Mhm.
We've got some pros who have some really cool social media feeds, and I agree. Uh, what recommendations might you have for tracking employee attitudes and conflict events? Ooh, that's a good question. You could send out surveys. You can make anonymous surveys using something like SurveyMonkey and make them truly anonymous. You could create a Google form and not track email addresses on the Google form, which if you're already using Google would be free. For conflict events, yeah, that one's probably, I don't know, that's like a personnel file, or a write-up or something of that nature. There's probably a lot of different ways to do that. I'll ask around for you.
What is this? A personnel?
Where do you handle like keep like conflict records or
Oh yeah,
how
the
do you
paper box.
customer attitudes? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Documentation of feedback sessions is definitely important paper trail when handling performance. I mean, we could do an entire webinar about this. Actually, leave a message for Nikki if this is something you want to talk about because
Yes.
it is art. It is absolutely an art. Um,
Yeah.
I
Ask ChatGPT too. They
You know
probably have
what?
a really great answer.
Honestly, I think it's really hard for people to, and myself included, sometimes to find the words to give real feedback without making it about the person. You want to make it about the behavior or the activity without making it personal. And I think a lot of these AI coaches are really helpful when you need to workshop. Okay, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to observe this behavior. I am then going to restate what I need to see and what performance looks like. Right. So, I mean, I think they're really, really helpful to find the words to say what needs to be expressed to an employee
Or a
without
customer.
yeah, or a customer. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Re-
These
Good
words
sanity.
are hard.
Yeah. Especially when emotions are on high, right?
Totally.
It says, can we get the ability for our Lamont spin touch to Bluetooth to go to the Arenda calculator and Skimmer? The calculator and Arenda app already does this. Hang tight.
It's a
Uh,
hot one.
yes, it is a hot one. We are very aware of it, and there are some things cooking to make that
Keep asking. Just
Spartan.
keep asking.
Yeah, no, we hear you loud and clear. We're working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mark, human resources help would be awesome. That's really great
Let's do
feedback.
one.
Yeah, we have a really great woman who presents at some of the trade shows who does a whole session on human resources. We're going to try to get her in probably like in February. So stand by on that. Crystal, our lovely Crystal who created our work order guide, says an easy way to get a signature on a service agreement is to send the agreement in a form. That way they can sign the agreement by clicking a checkbox. Brilliant. Put it in a Google form. Also a great way to collect all your customer information, gallonages, dog names, gate codes, all the other stuff.
Yep.
A really great way to do that.
You can
And
also use Skimmer quotes if you want to use stuff inside of Skimmer. We have a little signature box. By the way, none of that stuff is like really legally enforceable. A signature is a signature. And it's nice to have things timestamped.
correct. Can you provide an overview of the new pricing model and how it impacts current users? So there's no, for current users, new pricing model. I think you mean the difference between the getting started tier and the scaling up tier. Um, all of the, all of those details are on our pricing page, getskimmer.com/pricing. Scroll down a little bit past that initial pricing block. It's at the bottom of that page. Can we get the, we already answered that one. I think that's about it. Tools, Flavia, we didn't talk about.
Oh, yeah, that's right. In operations, you want to document all of your playbooks and processes. Some of the popular ones out there, Notion, Monday.com. There's one actually based out of Arizona that I really loved and used at a previous role called Trainual.com. I really like them. They've got lots of like SOP and org chart related type stuff, but nice, tidy documentation that can be accessed from web, from mobile, right? Those are great. Those are nice tools for organizing your documentation. And you know, the Google Suite has a lot as well.
Yeah, check out the templates. We use Monday quite a bit here at, especially when we have like projects to work on, because it allows you to assign who's responsible for what and assign dates to those. So for every webinar, I think every webinar, believe it or not, has like 120 things that we need to do to make a webinar happen. And keeping track of who's doing what and when it's going to be done by can be challenging. So we love Monday personally here for projects.
Webinars are highly optimized at Skimmer.
They are highly optimized. We're getting pretty good at turning these around in exactly 2 weeks. I think that's it. Interested in Crystal's contact info for fractional admin services.
Oh, yeah.
Let me go back to her. I think it's clearpoolpartners.com. Let me just make sure. I know where it's at. There it is. Bang. Clearpoolpartners.com. And she is a super admin, and a list of her services of what she can help you with is also on her website. Her website's pretty awesome. So definitely check out Crystal if you need some fractional admin help. She's amazing.
Please email us and let us know what topics you'd love to learn more about and talk about. And of course, please find us on the pool deck as well. You know, a lot of people like to work on the business during Q4 versus in it. Now's the time. And Nikki is the master of getting really fantastic conversations set up with all kinds of valuable people. And we're here to help you all and help you build fantastic pool and spa service businesses. We're on your team.
Yes, Elizabeth's asking, can Crystal do a webinar for her skimmer setup?
Yes.
Hi. We're hoping Crystal will do a workshop in the pool deck, our community. And so if you're not a member of the pool deck, it's free, even if you're not a customer. The pooldeck.getskimmer.com. Come join us. We're going to do all kinds of workshops here. We have been doing a few here and there, but we're going to really ramp that up. So,
Yep.
Crystal, we may have to borrow Crystal's time for her skimmer setup because you're right. She is pretty amazing at it. By the way, if you do need custom data needs, we can do exports. We do offer contracts, and we do offer a tier called the Owning the Market tier, especially if you've got over 100 pools and you really need some help with extra data and running reports. Give us a call. We can get you set up on that Owning the Market tier, and that will come with Suzanne's ability to go in and create custom queries to get you the data that you need and report on the KPIs that you want to report on. All right. I think
Thanks, everyone.
yeah, one more if you want to stick around. Very curious on how to operate a green to clean type service on Skimmer. Been back and forth with the devs on this. For green to cleans, especially if they're multi-day work orders, I believe Crystal had something for that in her. Yeah, she sets up multiple work orders. So opening second visit, opening water feature. You can set up work orders to be able to handle tasks that happen on different days. That might be a good way to approach it. I will say that we do have some pretty cool, neat improvements coming to our route dashboard and some capabilities that we're working on to improve functionality for work orders. So stay tuned for that. I don't want to promise a date because I don't want my product people to murder me, but I will say that we are working on it.
Thanks, everybody. See you
All
next
right.
time.
Take care, everyone.